and welcome viewers. I'm Pia and you're watching America 360 on NewsX World, and here are the headlines. Democrats are celebrating major wins across the United States with historic victories in New York, Virginia and New Jersey, while US President Donald Trump has slammed their success, calling it a very bad situation. Donald Trump has also stated that the US government shutdown was a major factor in Republican losses this election. He's urged the US Congress to reopen the government quickly, warning of impact on airlines, SNAP benefits and the stock market. Russia is reviewing potential nuclear test preparations in response to Donald Trump's statements on resuming nuclear testing, with Putin now emphasizing that Russia will act appropriately if other countries conduct such tests. China will suspend retaliatory tariffs of up to 15% on certain US agricultural imports starting the 10th of November, following the last week's meetings between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. US soybeans will continue to face a 13% tariffs. We're learning that 10% duties tied to Trump's Liberation Day tariffs remain in place. The death toll from Typhoon Kamikaze rises to at least 100 in the Philippines, with the Cebu province the worst hit. Floods have taken place and wind speeds of up to 80 miles per hour have been recorded. South Korea's Defense Intelligence Agency has warned that North Korea's Kim Jong-un could carry out a nuclear test at the Pyongyang facility at any time. The country is also reportedly preparing additional spy satellite launches with Russian technical support. US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has confirmed that the US military has killed 2 suspected drug smugglers in the Eastern Pacific. This marks the 16th strike since September, raising the overall death toll to at least 67 in these operations. China has condemned Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's comments and actions regarding Taiwan at the APEC meeting, calling them a serious violation of the One China principle. Well, viewers, those are the headlines. And of course, it's the day after election night in America, and Democrats are celebrating a sweeping series of victories in the first major polls of Donald Trump's second term. At a breakfast with senators, President Trump has slammed Democrats, warning that their return to power would be a very bad situation. He has added that his administration will push legislation good for the country to ensure Republicans maintain control. Meanwhile, in New York City, Zohran Mamdani made history as the city's first Muslim mayor and its youngest leader in more than a century. In his victory speech, he has issued a direct challenge to Trump, saying that turn the volume up. Meanwhile, in Virginia, Abigail Spanberger became the state's first female governor, while Mikey Sherrill won the governorship in New Jersey. Meanwhile, on the West Coast in California, voters approved a redistricting measure favoring Democrats. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you, what do you make of the sweep that has taken place by the Democrats? Because a lot of people, some analysts at least, were pointing out that it's a litmus test, while others were arguing that these states are already Democratic strongholds.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It was a good night, not only for Democrats and Democratic Party, but for democracy. What it shows is that elections have the ability to correct the excesses of a leader like President Trump, who wants to do away with democratic niceties that are in our Constitution. It is not the case that in Virginia, where I am actually sitting right now, that we are a Democratic state. We have a Republican governor, a lieutenant governor, attorney general. There was a revulsion really against the policies of the Republican MAGA wing in terms of laying people off, throwing people out of work, saying my way or the highway in regard to what happens with appropriations and the budget. So it was a good night, not just for Democrats, but for democracy. And I think that democracies around the world should take note that this is a way in which the people can govern. In contrast, autocracies like Russia and China should be concerned because it does show that the people have an ability to govern themselves, and it's not up to an authoritarian figure to be able to tell them what to do. So I think we have a lot to overcome, but just to disregard the results of last night simply, well, those are Democratic states, is wrong. Even in areas, precincts, and counties, New Jersey, Virginia, in rural areas, the Democratic candidates ran far ahead of what Trump was able to do in terms of switching them last time. So this is of concern to Republicans. It is of comfort to Democrats, but there's a lot to go forward. As President Trump has said this morning, he recognizes that the shutdown hurt the Republicans, but he draws the wrong conclusions from it. That simply you ought to do away with a 60-vote requirement in the Senate and not deal with the other side and continue to push your views regardless of what others in the democratic process feel is appropriate.
Indeed, I'll come to the shutdown very, very shortly. I request you to stay on with us. We also have Mr. John Rosamondo, president of Viking Research Associates. He's a geopolitical expert as well. He's also joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Now, Donald Trump, just about an hour back, had given quite a lengthy reaction to what's transpired today. He's spoken about mail-in ballots. He's spoken about voter IDs. Because there's a lot of criticism that is being mounted in recent times and in recent political discourse within the United States of America, within Republicans at large specifically, regarding the voting process itself, the fact that voter ID cards are not mandatory. We've seen Elon Musk raise it rather vociferously on X as well. Trump has taken it a step further, calling mail-in ballots as something that have made the entire voting process corrupt. This is exactly what he has stated. What do you make of these comments and the Trump administration's attempt to require documentary proof of citizenship for federal voter registration?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, you have to provide evidence you are who you are to board a flight. You have to provide, in order to get, state benefits, you have to provide ID. And, Americans need to be able to trust their elections. I mean, like when I went to vote in Virginia yesterday, they asked me for my ID because, we need to provide confidence to the American people that the people who are voting have the right to vote and that their votes are valid.
Indeed, and there's also been a slight hurdle that the Trump administration has faced. In fact, a federal judge had ruled a couple of days back that Trump's attempt to require this documentary proof cannot be enforced because the directive that he's given violated the separation of powers under the US Constitution. They stated that this regulation of elections is delegated under the powers of the US Congress and not the president. Where do you see this particular case headed towards, especially in the legal arena?
Well, I think we'll see another showdown at the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Trump court has been very wide and giving the president what he wants. I mean, the president unilaterally decided that he was getting rid of USAID without a congressional action. The Supreme Court said he could do it. So I think that we'll see this go to the Supreme Court, and President Trump's decision will be sustained.
Indeed, requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further developments from within the United States of America. We're now learning that the federal government shutdown has broken the record for the longest in U.S. history, now entering its 36th day. The ongoing stalemate has disrupted the lives of many Americans. It is leading to cuts in federal programs, delays in air travel, and hundreds of thousands of federal workers have been left without pay. The impasse has in fact halted key services and remains unresolved. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed growing frustration over the government shutdown. He's called out the Democrats for their unwillingness to negotiate. He has compared the position of the Democrats to kamikaze pilots, accusing them of pushing the nation closer to crisis by refusing to come to the table on key issues like health care funding. We do know that the Democrats so far have been raising concerns regarding the health insurance premiums doubling. They've put this as one of the key reasons as to why they're not returning back to the negotiating table, and they're not relenting from their position. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Raymond Vickery. Also with us is Mr. John Rosamundo. I'd like to go across to you, Mr. Vickery, first to understand from you this shutdown that has practically brought life to standstill for so many millions of Americans, federal workers particularly. It's broken the record now. How are ordinary people going about through their lives? Because we've seen analysts, in fact, express concern that on one hand, you're witnessing the tariff policies that have resulted in increased prices, and on the other, because of this shutdown, we're seeing workers furloughed, many even being fired from their jobs, being laid off at the moment, which could perhaps even lead to a recession.
Well, it's perfectly obvious that what the president says in regard to Republicans being blamed for the shutdown was a factor in the elections yesterday. And why is it that the electorate is blaming the Republicans? They're blaming the Republicans because of their refusal to adhere to the norms which have included negotiating with the other side to come out with a reasonable solution. And instead, President Trump resorts only to his fallback position, and that is to attack, and not to work through the ordinary democratic channels, the channels of democracy. And that includes this morning, not only did he continue the attacks on food stamps, the SNAP program for people who don't have enough to eat. He continues to threaten the workers who are employees of the federal government. So what is going on with the shutdown from the Donald Trump administration point of view is not something which is different in kind from what occurred from day one with the administration. And instead of reading the tea leaves of democracy, saying that this is not what the people voted for, this is not what they want, he is determined to continue his attacks. He was elected in large part to attend to matters like cost of living. Instead of doing that, he is making the matters worse. through his policies, and he shows no signs of relenting in that attack approach to our government in the United States. In the longer run, this is doing tremendous damage to our democracy, which has served us well for some 250 years.
Indeed, I'd also like to rope in Mr. Rosamundo, who's been waiting rather patiently listening to your point, Mr. Vickery. Mr. Rosamundo, there are, of course, a lot of concerns regarding a double whammy that economists have pointed out. In fact, this is something that Secretary Bessent, too, has hinted towards. He's warned the Democrats with regards to the long-term consequences if this continues. Do you think, keeping in mind the larger benefit of coming back to the negotiating table, both parties will be able to resolve their differences in the near future, or will this continue? And secondly, if this does continue, could we then expect the Federal Reserve to sort of step in and take action by reducing the interest rates?
Well, I think that the whole government shutdown is relatively juvenile. It makes America look like a laughing stock. I mean, one of the things that we're going to have both sides come to the realization of. We have going on a $37 trillion debt, and that's largely driven by what we call entitlement benefits. Social Security, Medicare, Obamacare, and so forth. That both sides need to negotiate. They need to let the budget pass. Because Americans are suffering, like you were saying, federal workers aren't getting paid. DC is basically become a ghost town because nobody's working. So I don't know whether I can anticipate the Federal Reserve, cutting interest rates, but I think that right now we're facing a problem because the middle has evaporated in this country. We are basically in a war of extremes.
All right, with that, I would like to thank you, Mr. John Rosamundo, and I'd also like to thank Mr. Raymond Vickery for taking out time and sharing their perspectives, their analysis with us on these very crucial developments. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting focus to news coming in. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered an in-depth review of proposals regarding possible nuclear test preparations in his country. This comes after the US has recently hinted on potentially resuming its own nuclear testing programs. Putin has further stressed that if other countries move forward with nuclear tests, Russia would also respond appropriately. He's also reaffirmed that Russia has always adhered to international bans on nuclear testing, but is now considering its options in light of global developments. He's, of course, referring to the recent statement that was put out by Donald Trump on Truth Social and subsequent comments being made. Remember, the United States has not tested a nuclear weapon in the last 33 years. The US is, of course, a party to the CTBT, but it has not ratified that particular treaty. Meanwhile, Russia's defense minister has also commented on the situation, expressing concern that the United States could jeopardize global strategic stability if it abandons the nuclear test moratorium. He's also pointed out that the US is increasing its strategic weapons and deploying new nuclear capabilities. Meanwhile, Russia's top military officials, including Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov, have also added that if the US moves ahead with nuclear tests, Russia may lose valuable time unless preparations for its own tests are immediately started. With us on the broadcast is Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World as we're tracking this quite tough statement that has come out from Russia. Tough talk once again from Putin, this time regarding Donald Trump's ambitions regarding performing nuclear tests, resuming nuclear tests after 33 years. There have been growing global fears over the amount of arsenal, the amount of warheads that US and Russia have. China is catching up as well. It's not quite there yet. It's far away from the 5,000 mark. It's still below 1,000 warheads that are currently known by the IAEA. But at the same time, it is catching up. There are fears that what's taking place, the announcement that Donald Trump has made, that could trigger another and renew a nuclear arms race once again. With Putin's comments now coming to light, do you think these fears could then realize?
Yes, indeed, very tough talk, as you say. Well, what Donald Trump announced, and not very articulately, it's difficult always to comment what Donald Trump means, but basically he was referring to the fact that China and Russia illegally, kind of secretly, are also testing nuclear weapons. And for that matter, United States should not stay behind and should also be prepared. And now Russia takes that. It's kind of a reaction of a reaction of a reaction, both sides, or even three sides if we include China. So effectively, it's I wouldn't worry too much on this, because this is not really a military preparation. Effectively, what they would like to, it's a talk mostly to the domestic audience. Both Donald want to make sure that the Americans are protected, and he will protect them. And similarly, Putin and Gerasimov, they would like to put the message to the Russians: we will do everything to protect you. The enemy is the West, the enemy is America. Don't worry, you are in the good hands. So this is what dictators always do. They try to project a foreign enemy. And what Russia is doing is exactly that. For them, United States and NATO and Ukraine and everybody in the West is the enemy. And they do everything possible to antagonize that enemy and to reassure the Russian people that everything is in control, where it is not in control, really. It's we see the war in Ukraine going nowhere for Russia. There are no good news for Putin and for Gerasimov from the battlefield. And that's why they engage in this nuclear talk as a substitute, somehow to make Russia obedient and to avoid protests around Russia for the total failure to achieve anything in Ukrainian campaign.
Indeed. What we've seen in Russia is the testing not of the weapon itself recently. We've seen the testing of the delivery system, the Burevestnik missiles itself. In light of this, many are arguing that what Trump has proposed that the United States is going to do, it's not in equivalence. Would you concur with their arguments, or do you think Trump's actions are crucial for the United States to give some sort of a message for posturing to signal Russia and China both to adhere to international norms?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Pia. The announcement by Putin a few days back that they are going to test Burevestnik long-range missiles was also met in United States almost with laugh and with ridicule, because obviously United States have much more delivery system, much more advanced, and the technology is much higher. So effectively, when Putin threatens with Burevestnik, for Donald Trump it was really to say, we have much stronger. We can test what you will be destroyed even if you try to do something. So obviously, speaking from the position of power, and by the way, United States have several times more weaponry than Russia. It is not the equation back from the Cold War, where United States and Soviet Union at the time were very much more equal. Nowadays, Russia proved to be absolutely inefficient and unable to fight. Its army is almost destroyed in Ukraine. Well, Russia cannot even defeat Ukraine, one small neighbor. What to mention about NATO with its 34 members, and United States, which has tens of times more weapons than Russia. So all talks in Russia is really nonsensical here. That doesn't bring any worry. But on another hand, you are right that the United States and Donald Trump, they are similarly making unreasonable, unnecessary, and to a certain degree also dangerous statements, arrogant statements, and that this should also raise brows, and we should also monitor how this develops later.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World today.